Aloha, this is David Buck, and we're going to be talking today about the pros and cons of living on Waialae Iki. First, we're going to start off here at Waialae Iki Park, which is a public park, and it's got an incredible soccer field, which is used in afternoons and the weekends for community soccer events. And if you look right behind me here, there's basketball courts, jungle gym, etc. So this is kind of like the base of Waialae Iki. And then to the west, you're going to have the main artery. There's a lot of traffic today on Kalaniʻi Highway, but the main artery to the west is Laukahi, which will take you up to the very top to Waialae Iki 5. And then directly behind me is going to be Paola Street, which will run you up to the east side of Waialae Iki. So for a little bit of history, Waialae Iki was originally, when I first got into real estate in the early 2000s, 2001 to be exact, there were 5 different phases of Waialae Iki and MLS. It's called Waialae Iki 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And phase 5 is actually at the very top of the hill. It's a gated community, and it was done by Gentry. Did a number of homes in there, but then there are a lot of private home builders that bought lots and developed from there. But I lived on Waialae Iki when I was a kid. My dad and mom at the time, they built a house up here on Waialae Iki in the 70s, probably in what would be considered maybe the 3rd phase of development. So some of the older homes or the hill are more like in the 60s, and then they kind of went up through the 2000s as you got further up the top. And then we're gonna cover both sides of the ridge today. And then also on the east side that we pointed up at the top of Paola Street, there is also another gated community that's called Kahala Kua. Now, Kahala Kua has its own MLS neighborhood, which is separate than Waialae Iki, but going up the majority of Paola on that eastern side overlooking Aina Haina, that still falls under Waialae Iki from an MLS standpoint. So here we are at the start. Sun's come out a little bit, and look forward to showing you around here in Waialae Iki. As you come up Paola Street, there is like a sleeper little street called Va'a Street, which is a horseshoe loop that runs you up, and you get a little bit of views going up that road, and then it hooks back down further down on Paola Street here. But I'll give you a quick little tour of Va'a Street. Okay, here we are on the corner of Va'a Street and Paola, and as we drive up Va'a Street, it's a horseshoe loop street, as I'd mentioned, and it kind of curves up to the right, and you have a mix of both upslope properties here on the Mauka or left-hand side of the road, as well as downslope properties. The pros and cons about that is one is you're carrying groceries upstairs as opposed to carrying groceries downstairs. As we wait for this car to pass, safety first, we notice a number of recycle bins on the street. That's one of the pros about living in Honolulu is you get trash pickup, and today is recycle day. And then we also have green waste and gray cans. So as we loop back down towards the ocean and Paola Street, we're going to come to a stop. And then from here, we're going to head up Paola Street towards Kahala Kua. Okay, now we're at the very top of Paola Street on the eastern side of Waialae Iki, and right behind me is the gate to Kahala Kua, which is a gated community at the very top of Paola Street. Got a lot of newer homes up there, and it's basically, if you continue up that gate and travel up and to the right is that neighborhood. But the irony is that Waialae Iki, which is an older ridge, wraps around it at the top. So all these homes that are kind of directly behind me here are actually within Waialae Iki. They don't connect at the top, so you have to go up Laukahi to get to those homes. But here along Paola Street, you have some nice homes that have perimeter views back facing west towards Diamond Head. Now as we head back down Paola Street, you can just imagine the types of views you'll have of the ocean on the horizon. On the left-hand side of the road, we're going to have the homes facing east towards Hawaii Kai. And then the homes on the right are going to be facing west towards Diamond Head. Obviously, the ones on the east are going to get a little more of that morning sun and not so much the afternoon sunset, whereas the homes on the right side of the street are going to get a little more of the afternoon sun. So they may want to have some sunshades or window coverings in the afternoon. As we round the corner here, you could imagine what it took to carve out this development. You could see a lot of the rock work here, and there's actually a dead zone for cell coverage here. And one of the cons about the Paola side of Waialae Iki, as we may have talked about, is that it's a lot more narrow road versus the main part of Waialae Iki on Laukahi. Okay, first we hit the eastern flank of Waialae Iki, which is going up Paola Street, which is a windy, curvy road, and it's a very narrow road. That's one of the cons, which some people can say, but also it might control people speeding. We're gonna head up Laukahi Street next, which is the main artery that runs you up and down Waialae Iki. But I just came back here on Waialae Street, and remember earlier I'd mentioned that kids do play soccer, so they're starting to set up. But Waialae Street, which is directly behind me here, connects both sides of Waialae Iki from the west side to the east side, which is directly behind me here. Alrighty, buckle up. We come to a stop sign and we're going to be hitting a little warp speed here up Laukahi Street, going through all 5 phases of Waialae Iki. And as we get to the very top, we're going to hit Waialae Iki 5. Okay, here we are at the very top of Laukahi Street, which is the very top of Waialae Iki, and behind me you have the entrance to Waialae Iki 5, which was the 5th phase of development that we talked about earlier. It is a gated community, and you have a lot of newer construction, newer design, more contemporary, a lot more steel frame builds versus wood frame. And yeah, so at the very top of the ridge, there's also a nice ironwood forest, and there's a hike back there as well. But yeah, you do have to be an owner typically to get into Waialae Iki 5, and they also have tennis courts and a clubhouse. And then stay tuned, we're gonna head back down the hill, and there we're gonna kind of cover some of the views that you get living here in Waialae Iki. Okay, now as we head back down Laukahi, you're gonna get a similar feel of perspective with Paola Street in that the homes on the left-hand side are gonna have a little more of the eastern sunrise and trade winds blowing through, and then on the right hand side of the street you're going to get a little more of the sunset facing west. Now, as we talked about earlier, one of the pros about being on Laukahi, or the main part of Waialae Iki, is you'll notice how wide the streets are. If you recall driving down Paola, how tight things were, and if there's a car coming and one parked on the road, you have to pull over to the side. Here on Waialae Iki on Laukahi Street, you have these nice wide streets where you do not have to pull over. And as we round the bend here, we're going to be looking back towards Black Point and Diamond Head. And one of the perks about Waialae Iki is you have these beautiful community parks. So we're going to pull over here in a sec to kind of give you a feel of what that's going to look like with the sun out the back, and yeah, once again, nice, wider, walkable streets. One of the cool things about Waialae Iki is you have these community parks that are periodically spread throughout the hill, and they're just big open spaces to take advantage of the view. This one's a little bit grown and it's maintained by the city, but you have some cactus and kiavi trees, and a number of other bushes, Kahala Kua throughout, but you do have some great views of Waialae Golf Course to give you perspective, and then we'll hit another 1 or 2 along the way. This one is right off Laukahi Street, by the way. Okay, we're back on Laukahi Street, heading down the road, and off to the right is going to be where my old house was when I was a kid. And to the left, which you can't see here in the picture frame, is a border water supply tank, because as you can imagine, there's a pumping station to get gravity up from the road to the top of the hill here. Another thing to keep in mind is that although the main part of Waialae Iki is not a gated community, there is security patrol that kind of monitors the homes throughout Waialae Iki. So that's one positive thing about Waialae Iki. And we're going to pull over and visit another community park. Okay, here we are at another park off Laukahi Street. It's a Kamoli Mini Park, and this one actually stretches through to Kamoli Street, which is down below on the Makai side of the park. But you can access it up here. There are some park benches, as you'll see down below. There's also ocean views, which is once again one of the awesome things about living on Waialae Iki. I did talk about earlier, but Waialae Iki falls in the zip code of 96821, and it is in East Honolulu. And you are straddled on one side by Aina Haina Valley, which will be off to the east, and then to the west you have Kahala Iki. So that's a little bit more from a macro level of where Waialae Iki is located. But what not many people are aware of is this went on for many years when they did the census for some of the most wealthy people in Hawaii. Some the neighbors that do come to mind might be Diamond Head or Kahala or what have you, but believe it or not, Waialae Iki has some of the more wealthy people here on Oahu. And the reason why is you have a lot of doctors and attorneys and professionals that do live up here, whereas you know the demographic of, say, Kahala and Diamond Head, you do get a lot of second homeowners, and then you also get a lot of LLCs and corporations and trusts, so you don't really know, it's not the people claiming that actually live there. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. So you do have a lot of professionals up here. We're about midway on the ridge right now, and we're going to wrap up here shortly, but the construction behind me gives you an idea of what was being built back in the 60s and 70s, and over time that is you know, people are upgrading. So if you can see, there is a home under construction there. There is some gentrification in the neighborhood. And once again, this is a recap on Waialae Iki. And if you have any questions about Waialae Iki or think about buying or selling here, feel free to reach out and give us a shout. Mahalo.